The Punch newspaper. It's time to now move to
The
the
Guardian.
Guardian, which is the next paper for review. And the Guardian has its own lead story that says 2027 polls, why politicians should embrace issue-based campaign. Details are on pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian weekend newspaper.
Okay, so a lot of stories here on this particular paper. Let's look at the right-hand side, where it talks about food. It says food security. Feni Ferry seeks robust military action to curb banditry in Southwest, boost farming. Story on page 2.
Of course, away from that story, it says 2027 INEC to conduct mock accreditation in November, and details on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper.
And of course, still talking about the accreditation into the election, of course. 2027, INEC to conduct mock accreditation in November, and that's also a lot of stories to work with today.
It says Ogoni leaders, just below that INEC story, says Ogoni leaders fault resumption of oil exploration amidst dialogue. Details on page 3 of the Guardian weekend newspaper.
And of course, when we go down, we're still talking where it says power sector woes. There we'll have it says experts propose cassava influence to energy solutions. Story on page 36, and just below that as well have U.S. courts permits FBI to review Tinubu drug case files in private. Story on page 37.
And away from that story, it says 2027 National Rainbow Coalition for Tinubu underway. Wiki reviews, and details on page 3.
Okay, so just below those papers, they have stories from where it says 2027 Tinubu, Adeleke, and danger of assumptions. Okay, that story is there for you to pick up. That's at the back page where you need to look at. I think that has to do with
the inside stuff. Yes, it's an inside stuff. And away from that story, just at the bottom, it says fake agencies. Tinubu suspend 3 perm sex as ICPC uncovers fresh scam. Details on page 36 of the Guardian weekend newspaper.
And of course, it's a lot of stories there's actually done at one. We're done with this particular story, and that makes up the roundup of all the stories we have for you. Of course, we brought you a lot of papers, and you have different stories to pay attention to. Of course, there's a picture story there which we actually were trying to see if we could work with, where he talked about the rule of Delta State, where he had a celebratory ceremony.
That's the Olu of Warri?
Of Warri, yes. And it was colorful over the weekend because we had citizens go in their numbers to honor culture.
Yes.
And it was a beautiful one to behold.
Most definitely it is.
Well, that's the size of it, where we have all the stories making the rounds today on the front page covers of the dailies, and we hope that you grab a copy. Like we always say, get a copy of these papers, because of course it will help you know what's happening around you, and when you have conversations you will be informed and give the right narrative of stories making the rounds within you and of course Nigerian.
Most definitely. The saying says if you're not informed, you become deformed. So we don't want you to be deformed. That's why we brought you this paper. So you're going to be really well informed, and of course you'll be able to have very informed conversations and discussions among your peers.
Of course, and like we said, this is strictly from what we see on the papers. We just gave you as it is, and we hope that you get enough information as it is. Well, up next for us is Taste and Texture. We want you to quickly grab your papers for those that want to jot down the ideas of the food we bring to you, and for those who can quickly get it, why not? It's time for you to have breakfast, and then we'll get in the conversation for the day. Please stay with us.
Hello everyone, welcome to Taste and Texture. The plan is to prepare an easy Nigerian delicacy and we will be breaking down the entire process with you. In today's episode of the program, we'll be focusing on moi moi. Moi moi is always a delicious and simple breakfast option in a Nigerian home. This one is a recipe that is filling, delicious and nutritious. Main ingredients: beans, onions, red bell peppers and scotch bonnet, eggs, groundnut oil, salt, seasoning, crayfish, and water. Step 1. Pick your preferred type of beans and add to a bowl. Step 2. Add water and soak the beans for a few minutes. Step 3. Peel the beans with your hands or a blender and add enough water to make the skin float. Step 4. Pour the water and rinse, then repeat the process till the skin is peeled off. Step 5. Boil your eggs till soft and set aside to cool down, then slice the eggs. Step 6. Add the beans, peppers, onions, crayfish, salt, seasoning, oil, and enough water to your blender and blend till smooth. Step 7. Pour the moi moi batter into a bowl, leaf, or foil depending on your preference. Step 8. Add the sliced eggs into each bowl of batter and place them into a pot of water. Step 9. Cover the pot and allow the moi moi to cook for about 40 minutes. That's it, your moi moi is ready to serve and enjoy. You can pair it with pap, custard, gari, and other options. That's it on today's episode of the program Taste and Texture. Hope you will try these recipes in your various homes and hope you enjoyed the program. Join me same time next week for another episode of the program. I am Saadatu Garba. Thank you for watching. See you again.
Imagine having the power of television, movies, news, and entertainment right in your pocket. Welcome to Free TV App, Nigeria's all-in-one digital TV experience. With Free TV App, you get access to over 100 live TV channels, breaking news, sports, movies, kids shows, and more, all from a single mobile app. No decoder stress, no complicated setup, just download, open, and start watching. Free TV is television reimagined for the digital age. To get started, simply search Free TV on the Google Play Store or Free TV NG on the Apple App Store, or scan the QR code on your screen. Once installed, register in seconds using your phone number, email, WhatsApp, Google ID, or Apple ID. Secure OTP verification ensures safe and seamless access. Inside the app, explore content directly from the home screen or navigate easily using the various tabs. The Live TV section gives you access to over 100 licensed channels, complete with an electronic program guide, EPG, pause, rewind, and catch-up features. The Video On Demand library offers up to 500 hours of curated content, including Nollywood movies, drama series, documentaries, kids and educational programs. You can resume playback, save favorites, and download content to watch offline. The News tab delivers real-time updates across breaking news, sports, entertainment, technology, and pop culture, all in one place. Free TV is more than an app. It's a digital revolution in broadcasting. Download the Free TV app today.
Tired of the snow? Tired of the bad TV signals? Nigeria has gone digital. Introducing Free TV, the national platform for every Nigerian. Get 100 plus channels immediately. Sports, news, and entertainment in your native language. All with clear picture quality. Whether you're in the city or the village, our satellite signal reaches every corner of 36 states from day one. No monthly subscription, just a compatible decoder and you are set. It's a national asset built for you. Take the show on the road, download the Free TV app and stream your favorite channels anywhere. Starting this May, scan to download the app or call 0700 388 7277. Free TV, digital TV for free. Brought to you by NBC.
Very beautiful breakfast there we brought for you, and what a way to start the conversation, because I'm sure you're good enough to go. Let's tell you what is happening, because of course Mukhtar and I have been talking about the build up to the 2027 general election, and that's actually a very timely conversation to have. Well, the discussion right now examines the just concluded Osun State governorship election, which returned Governor Ademola Adeleke for another 4-year term against the backdrop of reported beavers-related glitches and concerns during the voting process. While the election has produced a political winner, questions remain about the performance of the electoral technology and what the challenges encountered could mean for Nigeria's much bigger and more complex 2027 general election. The conversation will also focus on INEC's planned mock election in November 2026, the lessons that can be drawn from Osun and other off-cycle elections, of course, and the need to restore and sustain voter confidence and the implications of ongoing political campaigns and heightened political activities across the country. Of course, that brings us to the discussion segment. To welcome on board, I am still, of course, Anita Patrick, and I have Mukhtar.
Of course, I'm still here, and of course, it's a very, very important discussion, because we've always told ourselves that every election before the general election is a litmus test and a learning ground where our electoral umpire INEC could have learned from its mistakes and build up on its strength. So, of course, that discussion is going to be one that elaborates on that particular phenomenon.
Quite interesting, Mukhtar. But today we're looking beyond the winner and the losers of the Osun governorship election to the bigger question, like we said. And then this brings to the mindset: what does the election tell us about Nigeria's electoral system as the country moves closer to 2027 election? Of course, Governor Ademola has secured the second term, but election has also generated conversations around the deployment and performance of the bimodal voter accreditation system BVAS following glitches reported during the process. And we have that lined up, but of course we can't do this alone, as we have a guest who will speak to us, because he also has been around electoral issues and governance and is a research analyst who understands how this works out, and of course it's a way to guide us into the road to 2027 general election. And joining us virtually is our guest, like I said, a research analyst with the Center for Democracy and Development, that's CDD, in person of the Ngiafa and Galapu. It's good to have you join us today. How are you doing?
Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Let's jump onto this conversation. Of course, like we said, Osun has come and gone. We've seen the winner of the election, but it's not about the winners and the losers of the election right now. Talk to us about your overall assessment of the just concluded Osun governorship election, being the fact that you are a researcher and, of course, as well an observer of the process from CDD.
Once again, thank you for having me. The Center for Democracy and Development observed the Osun governorship elections, off-cycle governorship election. However, the process did not just begin with the election day, that is always celebrated. There is always some sort of very big spot. Hello, can you hear me clearly? There is sort of a very big spotlight on election day, but election in Nigeria they basically go beyond, it goes beyond the election day ritual. It is also about pre-election. So for the Osun governorship election, we looked at the pre-election stage, election stage, and the post-election stage. So I will begin with the pre-election. What we saw at the pre-election stage was a very tense election where there were issues of pre-election violence. There were issues of misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, and also some speeches that were very inciting. In all, some organizations recorded over 30 deaths in the pre-election phase. However, when it got to the election day, we were lucky, and again, credit to the security agencies. The level of pre-election violence that was had did not occur on the election day. However, there were different logistics and challenges of election administration that occurred. So basically, the election came. It was very peaceful. I mean, more peaceful than people had expected. Of course, we have situations in Modakeke. We have some situation in some places where voting was disrupted and all that. But in the general sense of what was expected, especially before the pre-election and the fears that people had, we would say that it was relatively peaceful. The result also, I think that many people have come out to say they are satisfied with the election result. So kudos to INEC. However, it is not, I don't think that it is an election that we can probably say would determine or we can use to say because it happened this way, probably the general election might also play out that way. There are different scenarios and there are different reasons why it can be different in the general election.
On the victory of the incumbent governor. So I would like for you to tell us what are the major lessons that we can deduce from these particular elections, and would you describe the election as a successful test of Nigeria's electoral process ahead of 2027?
Yeah, I think the very first lesson that we can learn from the Osun election is the lesson of citizens' power. We saw a situation where, despite the pre-election violence, citizens were resilient. And we saw that voter turnout was as high as 43%. That's very high looking at the Nigerian standard, especially looking at the past election. Even the general election that we had, the presidential election that we had, did not have up to that number. So it means that we have very enlightened voters in Osun that came out. That is a demonstration of citizens' power. There were also videos where citizens basically took hold of people that wanted to do vote buying. So they seized the money. Whether or not they did that correctly, and whether or not they should have handed the money to the security official is a different matter. But you can see demonstration of how citizens were able to protect democracy and protect their mandate, protect their votes. I think that's an important lesson. The second lesson that happened was the issue about federal might. The biggest fear in Nigeria now, as of now, especially now that we have many state governors defect to the APC, is that there will be an outsized use of federal might in the general election. But we saw situations where people were able to resist, to say, no, the police must be neutral, the army must be neutral, the NSDC must be neutral, security officials generally must be neutral, INEC must be neutral. And they ensure that they held these organizations to account. So, I mean, when the EFCC, for example, frees the Osun State governorship state account before the election, advocacies, everybody shouted, civil society organizations shouted. They came to the fore to advocate that it wasn't right. And the presidency intervened and apologized and said it was even an embarrassing moment for him to see that the sequencing of event and the freezing of account closed an election wasn't very good for for the optics of the election. That is to tell you that when citizens' power come on board, even federal might would have to bow. So that's a very, very important lesson. Then when it comes to HINEC specifically, I think that the deployment was good. There were places, for example, where voting started late, around 10, around 9, but overall, voting started very early, and even the upload to the IREV, was fairly okay. At about 9 p.m. thereabout, we saw that most of the results have been uploaded. It wasn't a perfect system, but we saw an improved INEC, in that election. However, I am saying that we shouldn't say that whatever that happened in Osun election can easily be transplanted to a national elections. For example, we will not have over 15,000 security officials, deployed to any state because they'll be dispersed across the state. For example, we will not have all of the INEC officials that we had in Osun State deployed to a particular state alone. They'll be dispersed. And INEC will be dealing with 36 states and the FCT, not just one particular state. And some states like Bayelsa, like Delta, like some states in the northern part also, the geography is very, very difficult. So in some places you will need boats to access to transport election materials. In some places you will need motorbikes. So the reality is very different when it comes to a nationwide election. But yes, kudos to INEC for what they've done in Osun. But then we shouldn't be overjoyed to say that it can easily be transplanted to a national election because the dynamics are really different.
Well, that's actually something to work with, and we know that it's a whole lot of ideas not to get too excited about, but we also want to see that get into the same process with 2027 election. That being said, let's talk about BVAS. BVAS was introduced to strengthen voter accreditation and reduce electoral malpractice, of course. However, we've seen technological glitches that can create delays, frustration, and even more importantly, suspicion among voters. And the question right now is, with these BVAS glitches, because INEC is set to do a mock accreditation, also election process in November, how serious were the challenges recorded during Osun election, and where we've seen isolated technical failures or signs of deeper systemic challenges? INEC is also looking at recruiting 1.4 million ad hoc staff. So how do you see them train this number of people to match up with the idea of BVAS that was actually brought in the first place? Because it's actually a technical thing that needs someone who understands the dynamics of how the BVAS will work, so we have a smooth process in 2027.
That's a very interesting question, really. I think that when we are discussing election technology, especially the BVAS, we should separate the artifact, which is the BVAS itself, from the surrounding technology and the people. Now, let's talk about the artifact, the BVAS itself. The recurrent complaints we've gotten, not just from Osun, is a complaint that the BVAS sometimes fails to capture the fingerprints of old people. It is recorded in several newspapers, it's recorded in several reports of NGOs. So it is no news, it is out there. Now it fails to capture the fingers of some old people. The second one is that we've seen situations where the wrong BVAS will be taken to a particular polling unit. I know this BVAS thing is programmed in a way that you can't use a BVAS program from one polling unit in another polling unit, because the voters in that polling unit are preloaded in that particular BVAS. So there are sometimes delays in taking the BVAS to the right places and all that. Then the third one, which is also very important, is that we've seen situations where our observers have reported that, the challenge was that the BVAS battery was down. So there are challenges with the beavers, the artifact itself. Then it now goes further to the surrounding technology. Beavers basically works with technology which is, beyond it. So it needs to be connected to the Wi-Fi for results to be uploaded promptly and all of that. Of course, you can upload the results even without that, even without the network. And then when it gets to a place where there is network, it will automatically upload. But because the voters will not understand that, they are also monitoring the IREV. They want to see that the result is uploaded real time and it reflects. So once it does not reflect immediately, it becomes a problem. The other one is about the users. The operators of the beavers. INEC works basically with ad hoc staff. And these ad hoc staffs are recruited very close to an election. So it means that might be the very first time they operate in the beaver. So genuinely, sometimes it is not the fault of the beavers. It is simply the fault of the INEC staffers or ad hoc staffers struggling to operate the beavers. And we sometimes, conflict these issues and blame it on the beavers. But it is sometimes simply a user error, or a technical error or user knowledge error, that is being displayed. So it is very, very important for INEC to test all of these things and see. However, I think that doing this in November is really very late, because in any case, if there are fundamental errors or fundamental issues, the election is just the early part of next year. What time does INEC really have to correct it? Unless we just want to do something ceremonial, what time do you think that INEC can really correct all of these errors? Is it December or just the early part of January before the election? So I think that this level of mock accreditation and mock deployment is coming late. We should have done this 6 months and invited reports from different people, have discussions and stakeholder sessions, before it is even November. And so I think that it is coming. It is necessary, but it is coming very, very late. In any case, technology should be improved, and INEC should tell us, from 2023 till now, what has improved about the beavers. Is it software update? What exactly has improved? Because these are technologies, these are artifacts that that needs to be improved. They are not perfect. So we really even need to know what has improved about the beavers in these past years.
Technology and the glitches, and that also is one that you can very much link to voter confidence, because that erodes confidence. So now, what realistically can INEC do if this technology is not realistic, and in terms of being able to deliver? Is there like a backup plan that INEC can deploy, which will enable the electorates to have confidence in the electoral process and INEC's capacity to deliver on the job?
Yeah, so I can't genuinely speak for INEC, since I don't work with them. I don't know the backup plan that they have. But what I will advise is to communicate transparently about what can be achieved and what cannot. In the last election, the 2023 presidential election, the biggest issue was the glitch. And it was because INEC raised the hopes of Nigerians and told everyone that, it was almost impossible for a glitch to happen. And of course it happened. So it is now to communicate the weaknesses and advantages of beavers and the IREV. What can happen, what cannot happen. The Nigerians know, and they know what to expect. Then it is also very important that there is an independent audit. For now, the sad thing about beavers and election technology in Nigeria is that INEC, provided the technology. They are the ones that have told us how the technology should function, and the functionalities and capacities or capabilities of the technology. I have always advocated that we need to have, and Nigeria has very good talents, we need to have an independent technological audit of this technology. We need to have tech civil society organizations telling us exactly what IREV can do, what the beavers can do objectively without INEC, because you cannot provide the technology and also become the arbiter of that technology. That means you are simply being a judge in your own court. So it's very important that we basically not subjugate rather, but then we sort of deploy this technology to public judgment by tech experts and see what exactly can be wrong and what exactly can go right. So probably that's what they can do. But when it comes to a backup plan, maybe they should ensure that the batteries are well charged. They should ensure that issues of it not recognizing old people, or and some persons are dealt with. They should also ensure that the wrong beavers is not sent to the wrong polling unit, because getting the right beavers at that particular point in time would waste a lot of time. I know that by 2:30, according to our electoral act, if nobody is on the line, voting stops. So there is a voting timeline in Nigeria. So it means that we must ensure that the right logistic plan is being made. Unfortunately, like I had said, November for testing the beavers is actually very late.
Much earlier to solve all of this problem. But my worry here, or as a citizen here, is the fact that the 2027 election will involve millions of voters more. We look at a larger voter register and polling units as well. And so INEC, thinking from their perspective that the test will give them an edge to understand where the glitches and where they could have challenges, to give them that litmus test to what to do. But is INEC's current infrastructure ready for that level of pressure? That's one question Nigerians are looking at, because you've mentioned it's the human operation error that sometimes plays this role. It might not even be the beavers themselves. Of course, with this large number of people coming out come 2027, because it's going to be an intense one. We saw that play out with Osun. Osun came out in their number. They're prepared for it. Nigerians are looking forward to 2027. What do you think INEC can investigate and fix immediately after the encounter? Because let's presume, we're presuming now that they get to see some challenges in the course of the test they intend to run. That's the mock accreditation and also the election process. How can they handle that level of millions of voter and polling units, and also ensure that they don't have too much glitches challenges with beavers operation?
I think the very first thing is transparent communication, like I had said before. They need to communicate exactly what the beavers can do and the limitations of the beavers and IREL. The second thing is training. We can't emphasize this enough. By now, the recruitment of ad hoc staff, into INEC should begin in earnest. So you recruit them and you start training them and repeat the trainings as much as possible for them to understand the technology and be able to deploy it adequately. So it's very, very important that training, retraining is emphasized. It's very, very important. What I must also say is that, there are a few things INEC can do. First is to ensure that whatever configuration that makes the beavers recognize faces small, recognize thumbprints small. If there is a new technological imprint that will make the beavers recognize thumbprints and facial prints small, they should do it. My fear is that if you deploy that in November and you find faults in November, you just have probably December and early January to be able to do corrections on it. Most of the parts of this technology, like we know, might be imported from abroad, and it's difficult to say that within that timeline you can do, you can make a very good change. What I will also advise really is that maybe immediately after a 2027 election, we begin to do technological audits and maybe begin to do mock accreditation, maybe every 3 months, every 6 months, to see the functionality and see whether or not it's improving. But I doubt that any big changes can be done now, because if, for example, it says that it cannot recognize voters, will you buy new machines and ensure that it comes to Nigeria and ensure that it is deployed before the 2027 election? In my opinion, it will be difficult. So what I'm saying is, at this particular point in time, INEC can invest so much in training and also be transparent about what the beavers can do and what IRF can do. So that if anything goes wrong, Nigerians also know where to hold them to account, at every particular point in time. But training and transparent communications are key at this particular point in time because the mock accreditation is actually coming in very late.
Better late than never. So what should Nigerians realistically expect from this particular mock exercise? And you talked about how you should come every 3 months, because that's something that's very cost intensive. Is INEC having that capacity to do that training in this particular time frame you're advocating for? But generally, what should we expect from the mock exercise?
I think basically what needs to happen is that Nigerians should really come out and participate. I don't know how the modalities in which they want to use. Maybe it might be 2 states per geopolitical zone. I don't know how they want to operate it. But Nigerians should come and not also just come out to participate, but they also should lay the complaints. They should lay the complaints. And when we talk about 3 months, 6 months, mock accreditation, sometimes it might not necessarily be as expensive as we think it might be with respect to resources. INEC, for example, can pick a particular local government, deploy it for 1 day, and see what works in that regard. In any case, I don't think that it is more expensive than allowing the beavers fail, because that can really that can lead to different ripple effects, including violence, if, for example, there is a large-scale failure of the beavers or election technology. So the cost is too massive for you to wait and want to just see on election day. Remember, in the 2023 election, Nigeria nearly got into a very big post-election challenge, if not for, some sort of the democratic values of the contenders, because they chose to go to court. But if they had chosen to go to the street, Nigerians would have asked a very good question. A fundamental question, right? Why did the election? Why did the high rep fail in the presidential election and not fail in the National Assembly election? So these are critical questions, and these are issues that can have ripple effect, can lead to security issues. So it's not something that is more expensive than the security of Nigeria. So it's better for us to deal with it now that we have seen it. So INEC should invest in training and also encourage Nigerians to come out, not just come out for the mock accreditation, but also lay the complaints that they have. And INEC should take those complaints seriously.
I like the fact that you first of all talked about the IRF and all of the concerns raised in terms of monitoring real-time results and Beaver's functionality. But let's move away from that. While we look forward to the mock accreditation with Beavers, of course, there's issue around network connectivity, power supply, which you mentioned, battery being fully charged, personnel being trained to get them acquainted with the operations of the Beavers and also how to get these results uploaded in the IRF portal as well. And then cybersecurity is one thing, because of course we have the AI right now, which is also bringing in a whole lot of confusion to deep fakes, misinformation, where we need to see the cybersecurity being firmly put into and tackle all of those things, not to get it. But INEC has also said strongly that they've checked all of those things and put in a lot of measures. Contingency plans, of course, that is also part of the things we look out, logistics and ensuring that the process is smooth. But how is this important for political parties, observers, journalists, and even civil society to monitor the mock election, which also give an edge? And let's also put it like this: if there are weaknesses, will there be enough time to correct them before the 2027 election? Of course, you've said it's coming in late, but like Mukhtar said, it's better late than never. Could you think they can still have the time to correct these errors? Because election is in January, and we're looking at November. December is just a 1 month time frame. Do you think they have enough time to correct all of the errors they might encounter or face with this mock exercise that's coming up in November?
Yeah, so first off, you've mentioned a very, very critical point. First is the fact, is the issue about NGOs, stakeholders, observer organizations monitoring the mock accreditation process. I think it's very important. We all need to monitor the process as stakeholders and suggest to HINEC places that they can improve on. Now, what that helps do, especially with this short timeline that we've all agreed on, is the fact that because two heads are better than one, and we are talking about different stakeholders with different technical capacities and capabilities, they can suggest, very short wins or early wins, or where some would basically call quick wins, to see how these fixes can be done. There are persons that maybe there are tech organizations that can say, oh, maybe if you do this, if you update the software, maybe, I mean, that's the technology. And if you look at the Beavers, it looks more like a phone, So maybe I don't know which of the operating system it operates on, whether it's an Android or whatever, or it has its own operating system that is different from whatever we know from the phone models. Well, maybe they could suggest that you can upload or update with this particular software, and it will recognize faces more or fingerprints more perfectly and all that. So even or maybe civil society organizations can also suggest ways in which things can be done with logistic exercises. Maybe the INEC has been using the National Union of Road Transport Workers in every election to transport beavers and non-sensitive and sensitive materials to polling units. Maybe there could be suggestion on how to work better with that regard to ensure that the right beavers, the right personnel are transported to the right polling unit. It's very, very important. So I am saying, yes, it's a very short time, very, very short to make major changes. But perhaps if stakeholders like people in the media, civil society organizations, tech NGOs, and even broader stakeholders like the international communities are involved in monitoring the mock accreditation process. Perhaps quick fixes can be suggested, and maybe an innovative idea can come that can basically transform the whole system. So it is not a complete loss. Yes, I agree, and I would say that it is coming late, but at this particular point in time, we need collaboration and ensure that all stakeholders are involved for us to see a massive turnaround or a massive fix of the system. So yes, I encourage stakeholders in all spectrum to be involved in the monitoring and deployment of the mock accreditation process.
So, as the campaigns are open now, what should Nigerians look out for? Do you think political parties currently are arguing or they are advocating the right kind of narratives that Nigerians should look out for ahead of the 2027 elections?
Well, it is very, very important that Nigerians begin to interrogate the manifestos of these people beyond hate speech, beyond religious narratives, beyond ethnic narratives. What is different that the APC is saying from the NDC, from the ADC, from the AAC? We must begin to interrogate. We must begin to look at the issues that concern Nigerians. What's the difference in what they are saying about education, about industrialization? It is very, very important. And if you look at all of the political parties that we have in Nigeria, at least most of them, let me not say all, but a majority of them have pushed liberal ideologies. So you see them, they might agree on the style, but they all will say, oh, we need to privatize. They might agree on the style, but they all say, oh, we needed to remove subsidy and all of that. So what is the ideological difference? So you see that it is not as though they do not have ideology, but they are all pushing the liberal ideology. So if you do not, for example, subscribe to the liberal ideology, we should be looking for political parties, for example, that fits into your ideological spectrum. So it means that Nigerians must be very discerning to not to allow ethnic, religious, or other very primordial, sentiments to blind us from the real issue, we must interrogate the real issue, which is first the integrity of the candidates and also the issues that they are bringing on board and how they have advocated to solve those issues. It is very, very, very important. But unfortunately, what I have seen so far, and I also would predict that what we are going to see, unfortunately, is that the campaigns will be dominated by ethnic, religious narrative or geopolitical narrative, which is not, what Nigeria needs at this particular point in time.
To pitch their tent in terms of the realities faced with and not put their minds to the propaganda that might come with the campaign season. And one thing Nigerians are we're trying to get out for Nigerians to understand is how can Nigerians avoid becoming victims of misinformation and election-related fake news? Because that's one thing we usually see that dominates the space when campaign starts. And another thing we need to get out is what should security agencies do differently to guarantee a peaceful campaign environment where incumbency power does not alter the role for opposition to also make issue-based campaigns for their the supporters to understand where their direction is in terms of governance and what they intend to bring to bear for Nigerians.
So you've raised two critical issues. One is the issue of misinformation, disinformation, hate speech. I will deal with that first. So when it comes to misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech, it's very important that the right information is out there. Misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech thrive where there's an information gap. So for example, if an information is out there, maybe a fake news is out there, to say the GDP of Nigeria has grown by 50%. And if the right information is also out there to say, oh, it is maybe 40%, Nigerians would know because they can assess the right information and confirm that this is a lie or this is not the truth or this is fabricated. But a situation where the right information is difficult to get, fake news or misinformation it basically fills the void, because in the information ecosystem there is no void. It is either filled by the truth or filled by a lie. So information transparency is very, very important. So it means every stakeholder, whether INEC, whether political parties, whether the government, must ensure that they communicate proactively, because there are bad actors out there that will release information once there is a gap in information. So they must communicate proactively is very important. Then the second issue is about security agencies. Yes, the state policing bill, has advanced to a considerable extent, and we will see how that is operationalized. But for now, it is not yet operational. So we are still going to depend on the federal security forces, to ensure that all of the states are protected, the campaigns are protected, and security for the election generally. It is very important that the security agencies know that there's a difference between loyalty to government and then loyalty to the Nigerian state, because the government will change, but the Nigerian state will remain, almost forever. Depending on the circumstances. But the state is more permanent than government, which means your allegiance should be to the state. And if your allegiance is to the state, you will be loyal to every political party. You'll be loyal to every citizen. You'll be loyal to every government, which means you have to treat everyone fairly. But if a particular political party is able to use you in ways that, oppresses the other political party or puts the other political party or candidate in a disadvantageous position or in a position that makes him less secure, it means there is a fundamental problem. So I think that it's a call for fairness, and it's a call that all stakeholders must ensure to see that it is adhered to, especially now that people have said, analysts have said, what appears in Nigeria is that we are seemingly sliding into a one-party state, especially as most governors have defected. So what the agencies of government can do at this particular point in time, the least they can do is to create a very fair and balanced competition. And I hope that, that is done as we go into the election.
Fantastic here. And then, of course, like you said, all stakeholders must put their hands on deck and ensure that it's a seamless process. If we must get it right, we must also act right in all our roles as stakeholders, because the electoral process is a multi-stakeholder affair, and we cannot hold INEC alone to this fact. Just like you've mentioned, from the security operators to the observers to the media, and every other person needs to put hands on deck to get 2027 on the way, and we get the needed answers that we're looking for. So thank you so much for your time with us, Dengafa Ankaya-Pool. That's the research analyst with the CDD, that Center for Development and Democracy. It's been fantastic having you on the program today. We appreciate your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Have it. It's been fantastic conversation here. The Osun election may be over, but the conversation has generated so much more from the performance of the Beavers to voter confidence and the readiness of INEC, as well as the road to 2027 general election has begun with campaigns that we see happening. Of course, Mukhtar.
Perhaps the biggest lesson is that technology alone cannot guarantee credible elections.
Of course.
We must see our institutions work together, and also electorate have also got to contribute their own quota in making sure that the process is seamless and it's one that we all can be proud of.
Of course, that's one thing we need to look forward to as the build-up to 2027 election gets really on the way, and that's where we'll leave the conversation today, and we hope that you stay vigilant as Nigerians and get the right direction to what we want governance to look like in 2027. And that brings us to the end of this conversation. Up next is a conversation we cannot afford to miss that has the sector. Please stay with us.
At Witchtech Cables, we don't just make cables, we deliver excellence. Our products are built with advanced technology, trusted for their unmatched quality and durability. With a wide range of cables, swift delivery, and continuous innovation, we stay ahead of the market demand. We are proudly Nigerian, fully indigenous, yet world-class. Backed by a professional team, strong technical support, and a deep commitment to customer satisfaction. Witchtech Cables is more than a brand, it's a promise. Witchtech Cables, quality cables better than the best.
also issues around the health sector. Health information is everywhere. We hear about disease on radio and television, see awareness campaigns online, receive messages on our phones, and regularly hear experts telling us what we need or should know about our health. But there is a difference between putting information out there and actually communicating it effectively. Because ultimately, the question is not simple. Simply what did people hear the message? That's not what it is about at all. Did they understand it? Did they remember it at all? And perhaps most importantly, did it influence what they did afterwards? Those are part of the conversations we want to look at today, because of course the information everywhere on a daily, and these are things that begs for us.
Well, that question becomes very much more important when we deal with issues around health and how we communicate health. And this is something that affects a lot of people because, like you said, we see information about health out there, but they don't really make a difference. And that questions the fact that are we really communicating these issues around health importantly? Because we've seen a lot of programs, even on television and radio, about health, but are they creating the necessary impact? And if they are not, then there must be a disconnect somewhere between the way we communicate and the way the people should understand. And that's what this particular conversation today will be helping us x-ray as to how we can better communicate health stories to make the necessary impact and get the desired results that we have, that we need from these particular stories we talk about when it comes to health.
Oh, well, that's one thing we cannot put away, because just like Mutar has stated it very clear, and of course it's something that is in the front burner because we have a lot of concerns with people from different diseases and how to tackle it and how they get the proper information to navigate through all of this. Take for instance, sickle cell disease is one example you cannot put away with. We have loved ones who are faced with this on a daily. Recently, media practitioners and health experts were brought together to examine how the media can produce better content around sickle cell disease, with particular attention to newborn screening. That is really one conversation you cannot put out, because we're seeing people who have battled this. I've had friends and
lost loved ones.
Lost loved ones actually in the process. And it is really a cause for concern. But today's conversation goes beyond just the sickle cell awareness or the information put out about it. It is about how we communicate the health and development issues in a way that actually matters to people we're trying to reach in the long run, because that's what gives us the mindset and how to navigate through all of this. And of course, what a way to talk about this. And our guest today brings considerable experience to that conversation. We have in person development communication. That's a someone who practices. He's a broadcaster, a media and environment expert. He's also the founder of Cleverest Center, and previously served as head of media development at the BBC Media Action, where he works extensively on media development and strategic communication. And he has also worked across health, governance, environment, and resilience, produced the award-winning Youth Reproductive Health Program, FLAVA, and he has been involved in major HIV communication campaigns and media training initiatives. And he's a fantastic one because he's a senior boss. I've worked closely with him. It's good to have him join me today. I'm here going to be asking a lot of questions in person of Aro Leonard. It's good to have you join us on the program today. Fantastic. It's been a long time, and it's good to see you today. How have you been, Mr. Leonard?
I've been good. Good to see you too. And good to see you on the other side, just like you said.
Amazing. It's good to have you join us on the program today. And what a way to talk about something that is very dear to your heart, because I know you don't joke around the issue around health, and talking from the sickle cell perspective, because I remember when you did that first engagement with me years back, say 2015 or thereabouts, when we had that conversation. And then now again, I've seen your work over time. Mukhtar talked about it. I was like, yes, I've worked closely. So let's talk about this, about information. Being a journalist and a broadcaster who understands this trend. Let's start with something very basic. Nigeria certainly does not lack health information. That's one thing for sure. There are doctors on television, radio programs, campaigns, jingles, and now countless health videos online. Yet people can hear the same message repeatedly without necessarily changing their behavior. Where do you think the gap is between health information and effective health communication for Nigerians and across the world?
I think it's more of how it's been done. Just like you said, people see the messages, but behavior does not change. So before behavior will change, you have to first understand that message. So if the message is not put in a way that is simple enough for you to understand it, then it would not fly. So that's the thing. Like you said, we've been doing a lot of this stuff for so many years. So there are many strategies that are used to couch messages to meet specific target audience. And that is where those trainings like the one you participated in, come in. And right now, what we have is that we don't have too many organizations engaging media people with such kind of trainings anymore. The one you attended was self-initiated. That's something that I took up myself to be doing over those years, because sickle cell is a problem that is ours. It's not one of the international organizations. So they don't really put much funding into training journalists on those kind of things, on like HIV and other things that affect them, also. So some of us just decided that, oh, since there's a gap there, what can we do? And it's been self-funded, over these years consistently. You get it? So that is where the challenge is. So it's not just about putting messages. The messages have to be crouched properly in a way that that target audience that it's meant for can understand it, but we don't have much of that. So we have a lot of noise all over the place, but only few of those messages are really making sense.
Or the problem is the way we communicate the message in terms of how the people can understand it, and how can we bridge that particular gap, basically?
It's by training. It's by doing training. A lot of organizations must invest in training and engage people like us to train. So we have lots of NGOs, government parastatals, they all have communications units. But I don't understand what they do. That's the truth. I do not understand what they do. Because when you talk about behavior change communication, there are even things you could read online about it. So it's not rocket science. It's not something that is just that is very difficult to do. But they are not just interested. So the one message is you must be able
Recording
to
in
know
progress.
that for any message to be passed by a journalist, that message has to be, done in a way that the target audience can understand. So there are skills. If not, you wouldn't have institutions training on all those kinds of things. There are skills. So you can't just set up an organization, have a communications unit, throw messages anyhow, and expect impact. No, it's not going to happen. So that's where the gap is. There are not enough people training journalists. And you see many of them, they'll say, we engage the media. How do you engage the media? Is it by coming on there just to talk? Or organizing one event somewhere and invite media people to cover, in quotes? No. There are strategic ways of engaging the media. And media is not all the same. Both of you are presenters here. Luckily, you also have some reporting skills and all that. There are different categories of people within the media space. And so you must be able to design strategies that will engage them at various levels. There's a different strategy to engage the CEOs of organizations, the heads of departments, the producers, reporters, people who produce huge shows, people who produce governance-related shows. There are different strategies. And so until when organizations know how to put their money into such things, we're not going to be getting results. It's just going round and round in circles. And that's where the gap is.
not about just coming on screen to talk, like just like we're having this conversation with you, and think you've actually engaged the media. The media needs to understand, have first-hand information, in depth of it, to be able to dish the same information out to the public, which is a fantastic thing you're doing in also helping the media understand the narrative to these things. You've spent years helping media practitioners turn technical development issues into content, which is amazing. But when you handle a subject that is medically or technically complicated, it seems very difficult to pass the information out. So what we'll be asking, where do you begin? Because like I always say, I always have this argument with lawyers. They say, lawyers, you have to go back to reading, to reading the books. But for the media, we hands-on, where you get the capacity building training, you get your research, you build all of that things, and then you understand, you can speak around all issues for the media because you get the training and it gives you an edge. Because when you hear a journalist talking on medical terms or talking on issues that has to be business, and you're wondering, did the person go to school to acquire the expertise, which is one fantastic thing you're doing, and we appreciate that. But what does every health program actually need to begin with? The same question, what do we really want to do with our audience to understand or change after watching or listening to health-related issues that isn't explained in details to the audience from your perspective?
Now, the health practitioners, the medical doctors, professors, and all of them, yeah, well, I don't want to use this word per se, you know, they call it jargon, right? They call it medical jargon and all those kind of things. But it's just simply there are fields that have specific terms. Even football, when you talk about football, you listen to some football commentary, someone who does not understand some of those things would not understand what the guy is talking about. He just scored an hat-trick. You know, you wouldn't understand what he's talking about. So it's the same thing. Every field has their technical terms, their technical ways of doing things. Now, they say the media guy, the journalist, knows a little bit about everything. And that is true, because the skill the journalist has is not a skill to be an expert in that field per se. No, the skill the journalist has is the skill to be able to interpret what the expert says so that the ordinary man can understand it. So, and how does the journalist interpret what the expert says? Is using his journalistic skills of asking questions. You know, there are certain questions you can ask that would make that expert break things down to you. Then you can now pass it on to the general public. So that is the skill that the media has. It's not a skill of being an expert, okay? But to be able to even know the right questions to ask, you have to first of all be built in that thematic area. So that's why the sickle cell people, experts, first of all, from the University of Abuja Center for Sickle Cell Research, which to me is one of the best centers for sickle cell in Africa. They're actually pioneering a lot of innovations right here in Abuja Center for Sickle Cell Research. You had experts from there, Professor Unodu, Professor Maxwell, Ruben, and all those guys. You also had warriors, sickle cell warriors, people living with sickle cell who are able to share their experiences. So that is the part that is called the thematic knowledge, which the broadcaster or the media person needs to first get. So I see a lot of media people who just go for events. Then you want to do a report. You're not even paying attention to what the experts are saying. You just want to just cover, in quotes, you know, just record, collect one press briefing, and go write a story or put on your news. Just like without really understand, you just pop in there, pop out. That is dangerous. And before you know it, you could kill people. A lot of media people have sent people to their graves out of commission or mission. anyone without knowing. That is dangerous. And the media guys will continue doing that if they are not passed through these trainings that I'm talking about to make them understand that that is not the right way. So first is to get yourself built in those thematic skills. So if an event is happening, stations should not just send people there. I know the challenge is here and there, but send people to be part of it, understand it, and then come do your reports and do programs so that you first understand those thematic things. So when you see those thematic things, then you know what they are talking about. Then you know the kind of questions you can now ask them to break these things further down for you to now share with the public. And then development organizations that just call media, come and cover. No, no, no. If you really want to pass this message and you want to make impact, the media is not one houseboy that you just send message up and down. No. The same kind of treatment and arrangement you're giving to your core participants. In fact, the media zone should be a bit higher because they are doing extra work. The same kind of thing you're giving to the core participants is what you give to the media. So you're not just inviting them, so come cover. You just want to see yourself that you appeared on TV. That's wrong. Okay? And that's the selfishness of a lot of development organizations, self-centered that we have, international and local. They're all over the place. I've worked with them for the past almost 3 decades now, so I understand what I'm talking about. It's wrong. You should be thinking about impact. So you should be thinking about the kind of message that this media person will be passing. Would it cause a change? You know, you find out that there are lots of things we could do to solve these problems, but because you just do these events, you're just happy that you appeared, they showed you on TV, you're not concerned about the messaging. So you must invite them as participants and ensure that they are given enough information, enough materials, enough knowledge, enough follow-up, enough enablement to ensure that the right message, they understand the right message, and they're able to pass on that message. So that is the way to go about it for you to be able to pass the right message out. Both from the media part, you going the extra mile, and the organizers of event, the experts, ensuring that they engage media like true participants of whatever activity they are doing. I think I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing any sound from your side.
That's what Glitch is there, where he's trying to join us back on that conversation. Mutari, we've seen this over time where, just like you mentioned, it's one thing to also put the right words out and also get people to understand how this plays out, not just having your own to just invite them, but give them the basic foundation, the background to all of these things. And we hope that from what he's saying today, the communication can pass down really to the right people in how to tackle issues and get this right. But we hope that just like you are trying to ask him basically that he's done a great impact with his own work and through his projects that he's put out, which has sent a strong message, and hopefully that with time, gradually, because it takes a gradual process for these things to align, and that gets out on the way for people to know how to communicate properly.
Very important. I like the fact that he said the media's role is one that you cannot overemphasize. You just cannot invite media to come and take a message, but you have to involve them from the particular inner workings of that project, because if you do that, then they have the grasp of that topic and they're able to disseminate it to the public. Well, of course, I would like for him, when he joins the call,
Okay, I think he's back. We have it back. Okay, it's good to have you join us back. Mukhtar was asking you
yes,
very
I was tapping from your previous experience when I said storytelling.
Yeah.
In terms of the stories could be, the subject can be very important and technical, but you were able to employ a particular mechanism that made it very easy and relatable to practically even the layman on the streets. So I'm asking how we as modern journalists can tell such stories and make them very relatable to even people who might not even have interest in health issues, basically.
Modern journalists. UNESCO released a document recently saying what journalists can learn from content creators. You find out that all your money, everything, is the content creators that are collecting that, because they seem to be telling more stories. They seem to be engaging. And storytelling is not just about humor, about all those kind of silly. It's about strategically making information be interesting such that anybody can grab it. So one of the key things, let me just share some of those expo and formula that some of us use, is remember I said that each message has a specific target audience. You must know who you're passing it to. Currently, there's the malaria going on. There's SMC season going on currently. Unfortunately, those involved in the malaria stuff are not really engaging media people just the way I said. I tried to share some things with them some time ago. They don't seem to be very interested in it. Now, the way you pass the message for the mother of that baby that the SMC is meant for is different from the way you pass malaria message to a teenager or an adult. They are totally different. Like when I produced the radio program called Flavor in those days, that was about HIV. It was a health program. Most health programs are usually boring, locked up in one corner. But Flavor was the most exciting English-based program in Nigeria. The Hausa version you are taking in was perhaps one of the most listened to programs in Nigeria. When you talk about a program making over 68% of the radio listenership, you can imagine how huge that is. If you have a program that is doing 5%, you're doing good. 20% should be a money spinner. Imagine 68%. But that was HIV messaging targeted to young people. The Hausa version means something like "What's up?" Flavor was just something sweet, but just twisted. So instead of flavor, it was made Flavor, Flava, to meet that target audience such that they could grab it. And listeners, adopted the show. They started calling themselves Flavarians. A lot of the slangs that were used in the show were brought in by listeners. Things like that. Whenever you go and you say, you're taking in the north, you hear someone say, "I can take it." That's the response. You find that movement because they could engage in that message. And the trick is this. First, you must understand that target audience, know their characteristics, know the things they love. Things as simple as where they hang out, how they dress, how they speak, what kind of food they eat. Those are basic things. So when you find out those things, you now take that your message. Take the HIV, for instance. Nobody wants to, before you hear the I, you run away. You hear the H, you don't even want to hear the I. You understand? But yet, that program became so exciting. And guess what? The successes we have about HIV and AIDS today in Nigeria, in fact, Nigeria had one of the best communication strategy for HIV and AIDS then, between those years of 2005 to 2012. Were well respected internationally. The HIV spots I produced won best HIV spots worldwide, not just in Nigeria. So you can imagine that. Targeted at young people, they loved it because we understood what they want, what they love. We understood the characters they followed. For instance, the Rugged Man HIV spot that was produced. You can imagine today we have the Davidos, the Wizkids, and all that. If it was then, I would have produced celebrity HIV spots with them, and you will see the kind of following. We engaged Nollywood. through the production of Waiting Day then, when I was working at BBC Media Action, that changed the storytelling landscape. So, for instance, when you watch Waiting Day, you don't just see HIV hanging around the place like some other HIV-related programs. No, you'll be following the story of Bayo who wants to play in Arsenal. You'll be following the story of the policeman and his wife. That's storytelling. The regular things that target audience goes through. You understand those things, and then you put the message inside. So if I want to watch Premiership, I want to be a superstar footballer, I put the message inside that thing. You look at the careers of these young people, you put the message inside their careers. And that is how now we have IT world, AI and all that. They want to be tech gurus. You put the health messages inside. So you don't lock health programs in one boring corner where you're just interviewing somebody. It has to be put into the regular programming that stations have that are meant for specific target audience. So I don't want to see your morning show each time is the politicians you keep showing there. If you feel Nigerians love politics, then put the health messages inside. I want to see you as the elections are coming up now. Engage those politicians on health issues. You get? Do that. So those are some of the kind of things the content creators are doing. And so a lot of organizations are now, money that would have been given to presenters and radio and TV stations are now given to content creators, and they are not very skilled. So I don't get to watch most of their stuff because I see the flaws here and there. But the media guy is the one that is trained on how to really tell these stories. So if the media is built, the capacity of the media is built to understand passing these messages, then they wouldn't be giving stuff to content creators that are not trained to do this stuff. They'll give it to the media guys and you will tell better stories. So understand the characteristics of this target audience, know what they love, know their ambitions, their careers, know their idols, and then put the messaging inside. Let the message be part of their regular daily lives. So if people in Lagos, for instance, have to wake up very early, rush to the bus park, rush for vehicles, and try to get to work, put the story inside that their struggle, and they will understand it, and they will love it, and then it will make sense to them.
Basic ways to put out this information that can actually sit with people and they're not feeling bad to how it is, but it is very serious issues that are being put out in a comic way, in an entertaining way, but the message is still being passed across. And good enough that you do this with trainings for journalists and then putting out the right narrative through things, because that's what we hope to see on a daily. But let's come back to the sickle cell thing that we know you're actually advocating strongly for. And recently you brought together media practitioners and then health experts to talk about that. The training placed particular emphasis on newborn screening. Why is that an important story for the media? Why is why is it a very important story for the media to tell? Because of course we see where couples get involved without looking at, maybe it's a slip from their preparatory state, which is actually very important, and they get into that and bring forth a newborn, and then there's the part of the child being a sickle cell patient and then has to go through the life, the parent has to go through all of those things. So talk to us about that narrative, why media need to sell that. And one thing that seems particularly important is that the media doesn't simply just produce another program saying sickle cell disease exists, but the screening process of it, how they can tell that narrative for proper understanding and walk through all that phase of life.
Yes, you see, the thing with sickle cell is that, yes, there are some medical breakthrough here and there, bone marrow transplants and some other things, but those things are terribly expensive and out of the reach of 90% of the sickle cell warriors we have. Now, there are also cases where people don't even know. A colleague, died recently, and for so many years, she did not know that she had sickle cell. You know, there are couples getting married today and all that. And we will shock you to know that even today, in this AI world, there are still a lot of misconception about sickle cell. Some people still believe some kind of a Banje disease, I mean, a Banje spiritual kind of things and all that. You know, even in churches, mosques, you see all kinds of things going on. But you see, the truth about it is that, yes, it is a difficult situation for anybody to go through. You have a share that, you know, share some bad leg. You know the leg is bad. What do? Because chair and get something to support the chair, you know, and so you could sit on it. So that's what this newborn screening is like. The situation is difficult, but it is manageable. So if like what the Uni Abuja Center for Sickle Cell Research is pioneering here in Nigeria, they have loads of centers within the first 6 weeks of birth. So if that baby is screened within those first 6 weeks, you could identify through that screening if that baby has the sickle cell disease in the baby. Then immediately that baby is enrolled in a program, and it's free in most primary healthcare facilities around. It's free. And that baby is enrolled in that program, and the baby is given special care, given some kind of medication and all that, that improves the baby's system so the baby doesn't fall sick, you know, over time. And research results that have come out are babies born with sickle cell has increased as a result of newborn screening. Now, because this thing is not widespread, it's something that is just starting. A lot of people don't know. So if the media does not take this message out and put it out there, a lot of people will not get the message. And that is what it's about. So it's about helping to manage the sickle cell situation. And sickle cell situation is manageable in the country if you find out early. They say prevention is better than cure. Not when the child starts falling sick, when things have already gotten bad and you start running up and down all over the place. No, if you take your child to screening within the first 6 weeks of giving birth to that child, you know if the child has sickle cell disease or not. And then the child can be enrolled in a program that is currently free in most primary healthcare centers, where medication is given to that child. And then the family is also educated on special ways of taking care of that child. And that program will run for up to when the child is about 5 years or thereabout, you know, and you find out that the child will be built to several of the things that knock the child down. So that's why the media needs to talk about it, because that is one of the ways to reduce the burden of people and families living with sickle cell. So it's not just the sickle cell warrior himself, the families, you know, even economy, you know, the number of people that have missed jobs and all that because of they are falling ill as a result of sickle cell and all that. So if you do this newborn screening and children grow up and become less, how would I call it, susceptible to a lot of diseases, you find that it's going to improve a lot of things, well-being, productivity. People with sickle cell warriors, they are some of the most intelligent people I've met. But many times, because of the disease, they are cut short and they are not able to give their best. So imagine if you're able to get the best out of everybody. You know what it will do for economy and all that in the country. So the media really needs to talk about it and take it beyond those isolated health programs to mainstream discussions. The flagship programs of all stations talk about newborn screening and there's currently a bill. Yes, there's currently a bill in the National Assembly currently. And you know how it is. If they don't pass that bill for sickle cell, by the time they go, we have to start all over again. So I'm calling on the media, talk about this thing every blessed day. Let that bill be passed. And so that sickle cell is put in the mainstream of health insurance. And this newborn screening can now be expanded to, all states of the Federation. Uni Abuja Center for Sickle Cell Research pioneered this in Nigeria, and they are doing a lot of work. It's gradually expanding. But if all governments, state governments, and all get to know about this, it can be expanded, and within a short time, will cover the entire country.
Talking about the newborn screening, something was rolling through my mind. I talked about the earlier program you talked about and the large success in being able to reduce the burden of HIV in Nigeria. So is there a possibility where we can replicate this in terms of people? Because you see a lot of people, even who are educated, seem not to care about their genotypes in relationships up until the point of marriage. They don't even know their genotypes. And there are people who are educated. Talk more people who do not even know about this particular genotype thing. So how is it possible? Is it a possibility that we can have programs where sensitization can be given to people out there so they can even prevent it? Because newborn screening is something that has already happened. They've gotten married, they have children. But before it gets to that stage, is there a way we can prevent it in terms of a program or enlightenment for people out there?
Yes, so that's what I talk about, creativity. So if a new program that sounds like Flavor or one other one I produced some time back called Just This Thing for young people, that is where we should go. So before they even get to that point of thinking about getting married from the teenage age, you need to start. What about even children? Even children, you go on the BBC website, you go check the BBC Children's page, you will still see that same terrorism news, those same kind of difficult news, but redesigned in a way that little children can understand it. And if you check now, we don't have a lot of programs, educative programs for young people, little children. What about school curriculum? But the government agencies responsible for all this, the truth is they don't even know. So that's why the media is all knowing. The media is the fourth estate of the realm. We are the ones that are supposed to tell them. They don't even know these things. So if the media does not tell them, they will not know. And in terms of replicating HIV, the success in HIV, I personally have been through some of the best projects in Nigeria. So it is doable. It is doable. We moved that same HIV stuff, we moved it to what's it called? Polio. Polio. We moved it to polio. We worked with journalists in the northern part of the country mainly. We created Journalists Against Polio, developed creative programs, put polio discussion in mainstream programming. And what happened at the end of the day was that we were declared polio free for a while. What about elections? We were part of the elections programming. In fact, 2009 Anambra elections, I remember how we trained people who were producing children's programs, who could ask their parents things about elections to motivate them to go vote and guard their vote. Someone was producing a food program, was trained and was able to do something that could tell people the kind of food to take out to the polling unit so they stand and stay there, just like your show elections where people have to stay, ensure that the votes are counted, ensure that the results are sent and all that. There are so many things. What about football? I produced, for the 2006 Nations Cup, I produced football jingle on sport, on HIV and AIDS, on testing. And the goal was when you score the goal, that's where one about testing. Are you getting? So the World Cup just finished. Journalists wasted the World Cup. We would have used that World Cup experience to talk about a lot of issues and put it out there. So it is doable. If we do the same things that I just talked about that we've done on other projects for sequence that they love, put the message in there, and before you know, and they will know that you don't just, there are labs all over the place. You need to know the kind of lab to go to. So there are so many things around it. So, and you need to do confirmation tests. There are many people who got in as a result of wrong diagnosis. All those kind of things. You put in them from the early age with exciting programs, and before you know, it will work.
To pass, how to get this out for Nigerians in the right direction, how this plays out in the long run. That's what we're looking at basically, and we hope that we get the message really out for Nigerians to understand. And I like the way that you said this narrative can be changed when journalists put out all of this for themselves. A message that works basically when we look at diversity and how this plans in Nigeria is incredibly diverse. We're seeing how they run their affairs and how they do things to every perspective. So let's look at the message that works for a highly educated urban audience, where may not necessarily work for somebody listening in a rural community, because Mukhtar also mentioned that scenario where the educated ones even know these things, yet they still fall short of all of these concerns. How much should the audience determine the way a healthy story is produced is one thing to do, because it's like you mentioned the election thing, politicians, they know that politics is local. They go to the local community, they do the campaign and speak to the people, because that's where they know the message is passed. That's where they get their votes in their numbers, because it's a local thing first. So once look at how the rural community can produce stories and good narrative. You said something which I agree quietly with. We had the sickle cell victims, or how do I refer to them right now, are people who are quite intelligent. I have quite a number of them around me, and I know their strengths. I listen to their conversations. I listen to them when deliver things. Very intelligent people. I've lost, I think, one or two of them, and then I still have ones who are still battling with it. But one thing is getting that narrative out through the language, through the rural and urban community. Sometimes an expert may use terminology that is perfectly normal within the medical space, but completely unfamiliar to the persons watching at home who are rural. How much responsibility lies with the broadcaster now? Because you're a trainer of the broadcasting sector who helps to bridge this gap within the urban and rural community to get the message clear and know the heavy load or the challenges it might put out for them when they miss it from the foundation of getting to that stage where it becomes full-blown crisis and they cannot handle it again.
It's the broadcaster's job. That is what broadcasting is all about. So if you're talking and people are not understanding,
is one
what
thing
are you
to
saying?
Know, and that thing to
so it's the broadcaster's job. Wow. The network seems
hope you can join us to have this conversation, how we need to explain in logical terms, where people need to understand and bridge this gap of the place of knowledge and the place of action, so that it doesn't get to the point where crisis goes beyond ability to deal with the issues. And then we'll love to see, because experts are talking about it over and over. And like I said, I've lost like 2 of my loved ones to the issue of that. And then it's a concern where I'm also glad to speak about it. And just like you said, the myths that comes around, people call it Obanje.
Yes, and that's one thing.
And that's one thing, forgetting that it's coming from a place of family, parents who are supposed to take responsibility for us, who are supposed to be knowledgeable, to have the right mindset to put out before the child comes in and faces life itself with something that he didn't even know about from the onset.
And I think that's particularly why it's important for the rural communities, because there's a lot of misinformation and I would like to say ignorance actually,
Yes.
because they do not even know what this is. And if you're communicating to an urban, I like the fact that he mentioned earlier about how you should study your audience, know your
Yes.
target audience.
Yeah, very true.
Because if you are disseminating information to an urban populace, you cannot do it in the same way to the rural
To the rural
populace
populace.
and get the same results. So I think one of the methods from what he has said we can deduce is the fact that you study the people
Yes.
who you are giving your messages. And one particular area I like with the fact he mentioned with the previous campaign they did was using the people's language. Because if you are communicating a message in
local.
English and you're not doing it in the people's local language, there's going to be a disconnect because they don't even understand that language properly. But if you are giving them information in a language that they understand,
The narrative is
something that they get, they assimilate easily and they're able to understand. So especially with the myth around things like sickle cell disease, where they say Ogbanje and all of those things.
It's really a concern.
It's due to
because
lack
this
of
21st
information.
Century, how
Honestly,
can you call someone Ogbanje when someone is dealing with something? Because we used to have the issue around different children when at that tender age when they're growing up, they are faced with all sorts of things. So it is left for you to understand them, understand what is actually happening, and know how to navigate through it, and not label a child who is just trying to find his
Very
way and
important.
fit in. It's actually very heartbreaking where a child is struggling for his life or her life, and then you label the child with some demonic words in context. Or what's but is this high time? Just like Mr. Lionel is speaking, it's high time we get married and then get it in simpler forms for people to know how to navigate through all of it. But one thing that also looks out for is for we, the presenters, the journalists, the broadcasters who understand this narrative, to also put it in simple. Just like you said, every journalist has a little bit of everything here and there.
Of course.
So when you're putting out, and it's good that you have trainers like himself who is doing a fantastic job of training journalists from their own perspective
how to pass this
message in very simple and easy way for assimilation,
Yes.
which is the best way to go out, because health is critical. You can have all the money in this life that you want. I don't forget, the money will not follow you to your grave.
Of
It's
course
not
it
very
will
hard,
not.
but it is your health that keeps you alive and keeps you stable to enjoy the wealth you've acquired.
Of course, even for a nation, there's no how a nation can attain development if they don't have a healthy population.
Of course.
Because it's the same workforce that drive whatever policy that government has formulated. The implementation is when you have a functional working class. When I say working class, I don't even mean only the people who work in offices, even the informal sector.
Yes.
Those are people who drive your economy. And if they're not healthy, they go down with diseases like sickle cell, which has claimed a
Becomes a
lot of
problem.
lives, then it's something that would be a problem for you in achieving your goal as a nation.
Let's hope that he can join this conversation, but I'm sure he's really struggling with the network glitches there. Hopefully, when he can quickly wrap this up, and then because we need to get this out, because health communication in the age of social media is actually something we cannot afford to play with. Like he mentioned, the content creators are there, and some of them you see someone come talk about issues, and he's not really a professional in that.
He might not even have the knowledge.
might
The
not
only
have
thing he
the
has is a camera and
in front of him and
and
he's
the
just
stage.
speaking
Yes.
to issues, and these are where we need to draw the line so we don't pass the wrong narrative.
Misinformation.
And misinformation does not go out in that way and becomes really a problem, because the communication flow for people to get the right ideas or the right application of knowledge
Yes.
gives the best way to deal with very professional thing, because every field has its own words of jargons, like we call it,
Yes.
that they use. But people need to also understand your jargons in very simple terms. Well, hopefully he's able to join us back. I hope he's there. Okay, so Mr. Lemuel, let's get your final take, because in the age of social media, let's understand how Nigerians or the world at large can navigate through this issue I raised with you in terms of the urban and rural side, and also getting the narrative right in terms of simpler ways, and where people can no longer wait for evening news or radio programs to get information. But social media is now there through the TikTok, the Facebook, all of those platforms, people get information. But how can they get the right one? Through trained journalists or trusted professionals who understand these things, so we can save life in the long run. Mr. Luna, can you hear me?
It's about occupying the space. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you. The traditional media is still the most trusted. It's about occupying the space. What the traditional media is not doing now is they have started online first before coming here, and then after the show goes back online, you cut the snippets, you put it back online, and then people get to hear the message there. Do not leave it for the content creators. And
I really want you to
people.
jump on this conversation.
Now, there was something we were talking about before. There was something we were talking about
is really not
before
helping, and we
in
can
terms of
barely
the
hear
language
you. It seems to drag a lot.
to put across.
And
Now,
I would really love our audience to also get to hear you clearly. If you can change your position or something, let's see if we can have that clearly, because we're also struggling to hear you really clear. If you can hear us loud and clear and stable now, maybe we'll just have you wrap this up in 1 minute with us, if you can hear us now.
okay, I can hear you.
I was
The
hoping
network
it
has
could
not
wrap this
really been
up.
our friend.
It has not been our friend at all. It's
Honestly.
been really interesting conversation.
So what
here
I was
with
talking
Musa,
about
and I was
is
really hoping we could wrap that
generalization
up,
of the
talking about
language network.
We've talked about the glitches, of course, and this is one of those ways. But it's been a fantastic run here, and of course, we've seen that where we need to put an end to the issue around misinformation and get the narrative packed out there for people to have a better understanding of what it is. And of course, we need to know that a false claim may be delivered in 30 seconds and go viral, but it takes a while for the correct explanation to come out. It may take like 5 minutes.
That might even be like a saving face,
You know,
when the damage has already been done.
And these are narratives we need to start working on as
And that's why I like the
professionals.
fact that he said the media has got to take ownership of the space, because
Yes.
like he said, you are the person who has got the requisite training to tell the stories. People who are on the informal sector, which is the content creators, some of them have got a level of training, but a vast majority do not even have the requisite skills to be able to tell the stories. But you as a journalist, you already have been trained, been retrained, and you've gone to workshops, seminars on how to do this. So this is your space, and it's time for you to be able to reclaim that ownership. And the only way you can do that is by telling the right stories in the way that the people will be.
And it's very simple and
Because if you don't tell them in the right way, nobody is going to listen to you. What distinguishes the content creators, some of them, is how they are able to pass information in a very quick fit, and everybody understands that. So we also, as journalists, should be able to recreate that particular trend. Some of us have digressed from the trend, because we all know that they tell you pass your information in as simple and clear form as possible. Some of us have digressed. We tend to use jargons. So it's time for us to trace back our footsteps and go back to the basics in terms of how we pass our information to our audience.
Well, while we have that on the way, because of course it's actually high time people get to understand what you're giving out to them. Of course, not everybody's at the same pace when it comes to assimilation. So we need to find a balance and get to understand where this narrative can play out really well for proper dissemination and assimilation.
Very important. And it rhymes, actually.
It actually rhymes. So where people can understand, and in a very entertaining way, of course, and in the local dialects, for everyone to understand what message you're trying to put out for the audience to get a grasp of what you're saying. And with that being said, we know that the narrative will change, and broadcasters, presenters, reporters, whatever storytelling area you're working with, you have a better understanding to pass this message really well. It was fantastic having our guest join us, a very amazing trainer who understands how these things should work out well, and the terrain of how everything should speak out well for us. Of course, social media is in a safe space in terms of having professionals who understand. Just like he said, when you finish talking to the traditional media, come out to the social media space, explain the stems, and get out the right information for everyone to understand that it is actually the facts that is given out to me, and not
and
just
especially when you're dealing with younger audience. You know, some of the younger demographic, they don't pay attention to radio and TV like they do on social media. So like you said, whatever it is you're doing, find a way to simplify it and catch the attention of your audience. If you're going for young audience, social media is your key, and find a way to use that as a medium to pass your message.
And of course, we want to say a very big thank you to our guest, Aaron Leonard, who is a wonderful trainer, understands the narrative of how to go about these things, and who understands the health terrain, environment, of course, and he knows how to get media to give out the narrative of all of this and how to sustain the momentum when you get the information passed out. He's also helped with media organizations develop developmental, focused, and revenue-yielding content through proper identification of what is needed. Well, there are times where perception that public interest programming and commercially sustainable programming are two completely different things, where you need to understand how this works out, where you're doing for commercial reasons and where you're doing for information reasons to tell people what the right thing should be. Thank you so much, Mr. Aaron Leonard, for your wonderful time with us, and we look forward to seeing more engagement and how this can also give our audience the best narrative to what next should stand for them, Mukhtar.
It's very important, and I like the fact that we're able to bring this conversation, and I hope it's something that the essence of this is for the audience to understand, and I hope our audience today have also understood the message and have taken it clearly, and they would implement it in their own daily lives.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of Global Morning. It's been fantastic run here with us on the program. We started on a very beautiful note where we brought you stories making the headways, the front page covers of the daily, and we told you, pick up a copy
and get details so that you're informed and not deformed. And of course, we brought to you breakfast, just the way you like it, taste and texture, which obviously led us to the first conversation about the elections, Osun election, a review, and the gains and how we can sustain the momentum ahead of the 2027 general elections.
Of course, and then we'll just conclude right now with the issue around narrative around the health reportage and how proper information can be given out to guide people in terms of very crucial things that we don't get to. Sickle cell, for instance, that's very timely because the child screening has come to bear, and we really need to find a way to find a balance and get the narrative right so lives can be saved. And of course, that wraps up the program today. It's a beautiful start to the week, and we wish you an amazing time as you step into the week, and we hope that as you get in the best of what is out there for you this week, you would catch up with it.
Amen. A very big amen to that, and we hope, of course, you have a great week and a great day today and every other day to come, that is.
All right, and of course, once say enjoy the rest of our programming. I am Aniti Patrick.
And I am Mukhtar Kasim, saying bye for now.
Bye.